Hey everyone, I'm Rue, and this is Rue with the Books. And if you've watched before, welcome back for a new video. I'm glad you're still here. If you're new, hello. I hope you stick around and enjoy the cozy book vibes I try to bring in this channel. So, in this video, as you can probably tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about Will of the Many by James Islington. This book has been around on my radar for a good while because other content creators on BookTube cannot stop talking about it. Someone I know has recently read it too, and they recommended it to me. It's been around on my Kindle for a good while because I managed to pick it up on sale. So I thought now was a good time to read it, especially with the second book being due for release later in the year. I think it's meant to be coming out in November 2025. So yeah. Um, this book is the start of a grand new series. I do wonder how many books long it will be. Um, with how much the plot progressed in the first book, I can see it either being a duology or a trilogy. Um, we'll have to see. If you like books and you plan to keep watching videos on BookTube about books, then feel free to hit the like button and please subscribe. It would mean the absolute world to me. Also, I just want to throw it out there that I will be leaving timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead if there are any sections that you want to just hear nothing about, like no spoilers. I'll be avoiding spoiling anything past about 30% of the book and talk very vaguely. But yeah, thanks. So, the first thing I'd like to talk about in this video is magic and the magic system. So, usually I would talk about the plot first in one of my videos, but I feel like talking about the magic will make certain parts of the plot section make more sense and flow better. So, here I go. It's funny, I almost feel unqualified to talk about the magic system in Will of the Many after reading the book. Um, just because I really haven't seen it used enough. Most of the story takes part in the academy where use of the magic system is banned. So this is done so that everyone at the academy is on equal footing as like societal rank essentially controls how much magic you possess. So someone high up would be, like have the amount of energy contained within a nuke, whereas someone low down might contain the amount of energy contained in, like, I don't know, boiling a kettle. So therefore we don't really see it used very much. Instead, Viz gets to learn theory about about the magic, theory about society, and theory about how society uses the magic. But I will say what I reasonably can about it. The magic system is called will. Will is like magic inherent to everyone in society. People concede will, like give it away, to transfer it to other people, and therefore the opposite is also true that people can also accept will from other people. Um, Criminals are also thrown into like sappers, which is where it's kind of like a prison cell where your will is basically just absorbed and redistributed, and they're kind of like hibernating. Yeah, pretty messed up. But yeah, will can be used to imbue yourself offensively or defensively. It can make yourself be more agile, or it can just do absolutely mental things like blow people's body parts up. Still waiting for an explanation on that one. It has a lot of similarities to like how Jade works in the Bone Saga by Fonda Lee, if you've read that one. But maybe just taken up a small notch. With society being called the hierarchy, and with what I described about seeding and absorbing, society works exactly like a pyramid. The lower you are, the less will you get to keep, and the more you have to give. The higher you are, the less you have to give, and the more you're allowed to take. It's pretty much a pyramid scheme. Will is also used as a resource for civilization, which I found really interesting. Like here on planet Earth, we use electricity to power lights, power transportation, etc. Will is used in this regard, replacing electricity. So the next section is about the big P, the big PLOT. This book follows a adolescent boy who's 17 years old called Viz, and despite his age in the book, this is not young adult. It is a full adult fantasy series. So Viz used to be the heir of a country called Seuss, but after the hierarchy invades his land and executes his family, Viz is orphaned and forced to flee, doing whatever it takes to survive. In an orphanage, he gets by doing odd jobs for the lady in charge, kind of like is like a prison guard slash sapper guard from what I mentioned earlier in the magic system. And he kind of like battles in an underground fighting ring to kind of train himself in combat scenarios and make money. This is important in terms of the training because he lives a very high stakes life and he has to be able to react like that and be able to win against other people who are much, much stronger than him. So after certain events occur, Viz is adopted into like an extremely powerful military family. The reason he accepts this adoption is because an opportunity is presented to him that would allow him to climb societal ranks whilst not having to cede his will to anyone. That is pretty much the one line he refuses to cross given his backstory. In fact, he takes many lashings at the orphanage for refusing to do this. So the opportunity he's given is to be allowed to attend the most prestigious academy that the hierarchy has, where future military leaders, religious leaders, and like politicians slash senators are trained. So, like, the better you do in this academy, the higher your rank will be after you graduate. And like, you can graduate at the very bottom and be like a sextus, which is still a pretty high rank. And then if you place first or second in the top class, you can basically do whatever you want, take on any societal role you wish to. And so it's an appealing opportunity for Viz because it allows him to put off having to cede to anyone, and it also presents the possibility of obtaining a high societal rank without having to cede like ever. And that sounds pretty good to him, so he accepts. The person who adopts Viz, don't know how to say his name, but I have been mentally saying it as Ulkiskor. Doesn't do it out of the kindness of his heart. He has a mission for the successful adoptee, being Viz, which is to investigate a murder that was covered up at the academy. Oh, and there's also another faction which are like rebels to the academy trying to overthrow them, called the Anguis. And they have dirt on Viz that basically forces them to also work for them as well. So he's kind of like the puppet of two masters, which leads to some very, very high stakes throughout the book. So Viz starts his time at the academy in class 7, the lowest of the low, and he's forced to make his way up. There are many, many obstacles that get in his way, and it just feels so good to see him overcome them. In addition to the academy climbing, murder mystery, working aside a rebel faction, there is also an alternate storyline that is teased about ancient weapons and ancient technology pre-Cataclysm, which is this event that took place which wiped out basically most of humanity. So, just if all the other stuff wasn't enough, there's something else to keep you hooked in. Next, a quick section on characters. So, aside from Viz, who I have talked about to decent length in the plot section, there are a number of other important characters in the book. I don't want to talk about all of them to extreme lengths because I feel like that would get into a lot of spoiler territory, which I'd like to avoid. Instead, I will generalize a lot of generalized things about the characters. So most of the characters in this book are high up in society, or upon graduating will be in an important position within society. This means that everyone that Viz is competing against in this school, when trying to climb, the classes, um, they have their own hopes, aspirations, and motivations for being there and trying to learn and climb. Since the academy is so prestigious, there are a lot of people there that have extremely high intellect. This means that Viz's job of infiltrating, climbing the ranks, and uncovering secrets is made all the more difficult. I was pleasantly surprised when I learned that not everybody at the academy actually comes from wealth and influence. Some have like forced attendance. That will affect the outcome of people related to them basically held hostage. Um, some characters even know things that others don't, and this affects their performance at the academy. There are a lot of dynamics at play, which makes the academy feel very vibrant and alive. Despite being an imposter, essentially, Viz does make some friends at the academy. Some of those are like genuine friendships and people he enjoys spending time with, whereas others are more tactical, or he's forced to interact with for certain purposes. There's a lot of characters that you can both love and absolutely hate, because some of them are just absolutely mean and disgusting, and some of them are just absolutely great. So, you know that I have to talk about world building next, as world building is a very important part of fantasy books. If you're talking about a different world to our own, you have to explain what it's like to live there so the reader can understand what it would feel like to be a citizen there, what they'd see, what they'd experience, what could mess them up. So it's a very important section. So I was very impressed with the world building in this book in terms of how society was described and so incredibly well fleshed out, in addition to the environment that we see in the book as well. So society is split into three major sectors which control their own parts of the government, those being firstly military, secondary religion, and then finally governance. Each sector has several of its own pyramids, and each pyramid has like someone at the top, which controls the distribution of will around that pyramid. So, for example, if we talk about like governance, for example, they might be in control of like lighting and transportation. So they'll control how much will is distributed, both lighting and transportation and whatever else they're in charge of. These pyramids are generally split into ranks, with princeps being a very, very, very powerful rank, being at the very top. Although, because the number of princeps in society is so low, not every pyramid has one. Sometimes it's someone as low as a sextus, although sextus is still quite a good rank. And then octavus at the very bottom. The world is alive and dynamic with shifting politics, where the importance of certain factions are rearranged as the story goes on. The politics is explored very heavily and it feels very real. The world shares a lot of aspects with our modern civilization, minus things like computers and smartphones, but plus things like, trains and transportation. There are these kind of like flying trains. In this book, they're called transvects, and they run between locations, though they are powered by will and not electricity. The world has kind of like a Roman architecture kind of vibe. Outside of civilization, there's lots of like lush, unclaimed expanses of nature, and it's got kind of like a weirdly futuristic kind of feel, with there being things like levitating buildings, which, don't really exist. in our culture. Um, the environment isn't a very important aspect of the book, but it isn't an afterthought either. Within those uncivilized spanses of land lay ruins that originate from pre-cataclysm society. The cataclysm wiped out a large percentage of people at the time, forcing like a kind of reset. So, and because of the ancient weapons and technology, these ruins are kind of like researched, studied, and some of the things that are found that are then pulled into modern society. So, just like world building, most, and I say most because it's not always the case, most fantasy books have action. The action in this book was great. Viz always fights heavily disadvantaged in this book, kind of sporting the title of an underdog. Whether it's close quarters unarmed combat or sword fighting, he always makes the battle exciting. Action in this book isn't necessarily always fighting, though. There are plenty of tense moments where Viz is trying to escape being caught or found out running for his life. For me, those kinds of moments were the most tense and adrenaline filled, actually making my heart hammer. That doesn't happen very often. Action in this book can also be the way that Viz is able to put together a plan, trap someone within it by goading them, using social expectations against them, whatever he can use, he will, and just generally outsmarting them. Viz can really play 4D chess with people. He's both very powerful and adaptable without even using will, and very, very, very smart and clever. Having just described my definition of action in this book, I want to say that it was by far my favorite aspect of the book. The action moments rarely come naturally where one person stumbles upon another in the wild and then proceeds to do battle. Action in this book usually comes when the hand of Viz is forced. For example, Ulkascore could say that Viz needs to make progress on the mystery now, or he's being sent to the Sapper. Alternatively, the Anguis need him to do something now, or they'll expose his true identity. Finally, it could just be that Viz needs to make progress to go through the classes faster because that's his own personal motivation for being there, and something is halting his progress. These scenarios force Viz to kind of think outside the box and concoct a plan and go through with it on short notice. This short notice, the feeling that it's all or nothing really brings up the stakes to like the absolute max. And the climax of his plan is always absolutely incredible, with the reader having read the setup phase, understanding the implications of failure. The climax sinks its sharp teeth into you. It's just so good. So, to conclude, Will of the Many is a fantastic book set in a living, breathing world with a heavy emphasis on shifting politics. The politics mean that there are greater forces at play than Viz knows, and they have a hand in the outcome of the story. The major characters within the book all have their own hopes and motivations, making nobody of worth someone you can sweep under the rug and just ignore. Viz has to take this into account. The stakes in this book are very high. Viz has to plan, lie, cover up, and much more to be able to successfully infiltrate a prestigious academy where, if he's revealed to be an enemy of the state, his life is over. To make matters worse, he has to work for multiple people with differences of interest. One mistake is all it would take to ruin his life, lead him to death. This book has multiple storylines, the main one being about Viz, but it seems eventually a story about a great disaster before modern times will come head to head with the current situations. All of these things are done with great care, leading to a tense, action-packed, page-turner fantasy novel. I really enjoyed this book, and I genuinely can't wait for the next one, so that I can get to find out more about the mysteries and more things can be revealed. And just to see where Viz's character goes after the events of this book. My final rating, and for the first time on this channel, so that's very exciting, is 5 stars. So, thanks for watching. Well done on making it to the end of the video. Please comment down below if you've read the book, and if so, what you think. I would also love to hear from you about what you are currently reading. There are always more books to discover, so please do. And anyway, until next time, Rue out.